When no one is there for someone, the world itself begins to feel empty, as if every sound is muted and every color has lost its vibrancy. Days blur into nights, and nights stretch endlessly, filled with restless thoughts and the constant echo of unanswered questions. Why am I here? Does anyone notice me? Do I matter? At first, it might feel like a passing moment, a temporary loneliness that most people experience, but over time, that temporary void can grow into a permanent state, where silence is no longer peaceful, it is oppressive, a reminder of what's missing. Humans are wired for connection, for warmth, for the comfort of knowing there is someone to lean on. When that is stripped away, life itself begins to feel heavier than it should, as though every step forward requires lifting the weight of 1,000 invisible burdens. No one prepares you for the way loneliness seeps into every aspect of existence. It starts in subtle ways. You stop sharing your opinions because you believe nobody cares. You stop reaching out because every unanswered call feels like proof of your insignificance. Meals become mechanical, not moments of joy. Achievements lose their meaning, because what is a victory if no one cheers? And failures become unbearable, because there is no one there to reassure you, to say, it's okay, you'll get through this. Without that lifeline, even the smallest setback can feel catastrophic. The silence becomes more than a lack of noise, it becomes a cruel teacher, whispering lies into the mind. You are alone. You are unwanted. You will always be this way. The mind, when starved of connection, begins to unravel. Studies show that isolation can impact the brain in the same way as physical pain, but the ache is harder to point to, harder to treat. It's not a wound you can stitch closed, or a broken bone you can mend. It's an invisible fracture running through the spirit, one that deepens each day without acknowledgement. People often underestimate the human need for touch, laughter, and genuine conversation. They say, be independent, be strong, but strength without support eventually becomes exhaustion. Independence without connection can become exile, and in that exile, the human soul starts to shrink, retreating inward until it no longer believes in its own worth. Perhaps the cruelest part of having no one is not the absence of company, but the absence of witness. Life is meant to be shared, to have someone notice the little things, the way you laugh, the dreams you hold, the fears you try to hide. Without a witness, life feels like it is happening in a void. You could scream, you could cry, you could fall apart, and still, the world would carry on as though nothing happened. That realization is both terrifying and devastating. The idea that your existence may not ripple into anyone else's life. And when that thought takes root, hope begins to fade. But this pain doesn't just exist in the heart of one person, it reflects something deeper about the society we live in. We are more connected than ever through technology, yet so many feel utterly alone. Social media creates the illusion of companionship, but when the screen goes dark, the room is just as empty. We scroll through other people's highlights, comparing our loneliness to their curated joy, and the gap between us and the world seems to widen. Nobody posts their silence. Nobody shares their ache. And so we believe, falsely, that we are the only ones drowning in it. When no one is there, even the body begins to suffer. Loneliness can increase blood pressure, weaken the immune system, and shorten life expectancy. It's as if the body itself recognizes that it was not built to exist in isolation, and slowly begins to break down under the pressure. The nights become harder to endure, sleep eludes you, or worse, it comes in fragments filled with restless dreams. Waking up feels less like a fresh start and more like a continuation of the same dull ache. You carry yourself through each day like a ghost, present but unseen, functioning but not living. And yet, even in the darkest stretches of loneliness, there remains a small ember inside the human spirit. It flickers quietly, almost forgotten, but it is there, the stubborn hope that someone will notice, that someone will care, that someone will reach across the silence. This ember is what keeps people alive in the face of unbearable solitude. It whispers that maybe tomorrow will be different, maybe someone will ask how you are and mean it, maybe you will find a place where you belong. That ember, fragile as it may be, is proof that deep down, no one truly wants to exist without connection. In the beginning, when someone realizes they truly have no one to lean on, it often feels surreal. At first, they might deny it, convincing themselves that this is only temporary, that their phone will buzz tomorrow, that someone will check in, that they just caught people at the wrong time. But as days turn into weeks, that silence grows heavier, pressing down like a storm cloud that never moves. Early loneliness feels like hunger. It gnaws at you in ways you cannot ignore. It makes you crave even the smallest form of acknowledgement, a smile from a stranger, a random text, or a conversation with a cashier that lingers a second too long. In those moments, you realize just how desperate the human heart becomes when stripped of connection. It will take crumbs of attention and cling to them as if they are feasts. This is the first stage, where hope is still alive, but fragile. As the loneliness deepens, something more dangerous begins to happen. The mind starts to turn against itself. The lack of affirmation, the lack of presence, becomes proof to the lonely person that they are not worth loving, not worth noticing, not worth keeping around. This is where the lies of loneliness become louder than any truth. The voice in the head whispers, "You are invisible. You are replaceable. You are nothing." And because no one is there to challenge those thoughts, no one is there to remind them of their worth, they begin to believe it. This stage is like walking through a house filled with mirrors, but every reflection is distorted, showing only flaws, failures, and emptiness. They no longer see themselves as they truly are, they only see what the silence tells them. Over time, loneliness shifts from being an external reality into an internal identity. The person doesn't just feel alone, they become loneliness itself. It bleeds into everything: work, hobbies, even dreams. The joy of accomplishing something is dulled, because there is no one to share it with. A promotion, a new skill, a piece of art, even a personal milestone, all of it feels hollow when it echoes back into silence. At this stage, the loneliness becomes suffocating. The individual starts withdrawing even further, avoiding places where they might feel the sting of watching others laugh, hug, or connect. Crowds become unbearable because they magnify what the lonely person doesn't have. So instead, they retreat into smaller and smaller worlds, until sometimes all that's left is a room, a bed, and the endless company of their thoughts. The physical body begins to betray them too. The stress of isolation wears on the immune system. The heart beats harder, sleep becomes restless, and the body aches in ways that doctors can't fully diagnose because the root cause, isn't a virus or a disease, the absence of love and connection. People don't always realize that the body keeps score of emotional pain, and loneliness is one of the heaviest weights it can carry. It ages a person faster, wears them down, makes them feel older than they are. In many cases, it shortens life, not through some dramatic event, but through the slow erosion of willpower, the quiet disintegration of health. And yet, perhaps the cruelest consequence of having no one is the way it distorts time itself. Days lose their meaning because there is no one to look forward to. Holidays become dreaded rather than celebrated, because every tradition only highlights the emptiness at the table. Birthdays sting because they remind the lonely person that another year has passed, and still, they walk through life unseen. Even the future becomes a shadow, because how can you dream of tomorrow when today feels unbearable and unacknowledged? This is the stage where hopelessness can set in, where people begin to believe that their story has no purpose, because there is no one to witness it. But despite how crushing this reality can be, loneliness also reveals something profound about the human spirit. It shows how deeply we were made for connection. It shows that, no matter how much society preaches independence and self-sufficiency, no one is truly built to thrive alone. And inside even the loneliest soul, there remains a spark, however dim, that longs for connection. This is why some people, even after years of solitude, still perk up at the sound of their name, still light up when someone gives them genuine attention, still cry when shown unexpected kindness, because no matter how deep the loneliness, the human heart remembers what it's like to be cared for, and it yearns for it endlessly. In some cases, loneliness drives people toward self-discovery. With no one to lean on, they learn to sit with their own thoughts, to confront their fears, to discover inner strength. But this journey is painful, not romantic. It requires facing the shadows without a guide, stumbling through confusion without encouragement, and building resilience without applause. Some survive it and emerge stronger, more compassionate, others, however, are consumed by it, unable to carry the weight without help. And that contrast, the ones who grow versus the ones who collapse, shows just how fragile and powerful loneliness can be. When no one is there for someone, the consequences ripple far beyond just one life. A lonely child grows into an adult who struggles to trust, who doubts love, who fears abandonment. A lonely adult may withdraw so deeply that they stop pursuing dreams, stop giving their best, stop contributing their gifts to the world. Entire communities lose potential because loneliness quietly robs individuals of their strength. And society at large suffers because every person who fades into the shadows is a person whose story, talents, and love could have made the world richer.